through our procurement platform, GenPro, that we share with BSM. And as I said to you, we would try and get the best prices and do that on a no cost basis, just because it seems, certainly I was persuaded after the last meeting as to the importance of these things. We've come up with a cost which Kuba's looked at, which is, I think, well below what was talked about last time. I think $800 is the minimum that we can get this for. We have a number of suppliers, and that's based on 500 to 1,000 units, and then there's various costs for the oxygen cylinders as well. So I think if Kuba, if you're in agreement, then we will circulate that, and please take it as my undertaking, and I'm sure BSM will support me on this, that there will be nil profit margin made on this whatsoever. It is purely a good thing and the right thing to do. If I was needed to be persuaded on that, last week we had a very nail-biting 24 hours when one of our vessels was 6 hours from Sri Lanka, and we had one of the crew members went down extremely seriously with COVID, and we had 4.5 hours of oxygen left. So it really was a race against time, and we made it by the skin of our teeth. And this was by taking him off the oxygen, putting him back on the oxygen, and basically keeping him alive. So from going from nil experience to a full experience, we certainly are going to be putting these oxygen concentrators on board all of our vessels, and you know, I wouldn't wish this on anybody, and had that gone pear-shaped, we would have all felt extremely bad. For the sake of $800, it's something we're certainly going to do. So I'm very grateful for Anglo Eastern or whoever for highlighting this, and Kuba, well done you for sort of bringing that up. But that was you know, a horrible experience for all of us. So oxygen concentrators will certainly be put on our vessels, and the very basic cost is there if you want to partake in that. Second point, the general principles. I'm pleased to say that after getting it slightly wrong, or when most of these mistakes come from sort of poor instructions, but Alpha Marine, having gone a little bit off piece to begin with, came back absolutely spot on. And what we've got is a basic framework for these general principles, which Kuba and I have gone through. And I think actually, as a start point now, we're in a really good place. So I think, Kuba, if you're in agreement, what we need to do is put together a drafting committee, keep it small and dynamic, and look at those general principles and add to the principles or take away whatever we want to do, and then Alpha Marine will put definition behind the headline points. But I think it's a really good start point. Alpha Marine will also provide some information as to how the guidance is going to be given as to how companies comply with these general principles, how they are, if you like, vetted, and how we all improve on the road towards full compliance. It's not a pass or failure thing. It's very much aspirational, and they've done a very good job there. So Kuba, I think you probably got some ideas on that already. A lot of you will want to be on that drafting committee. You're more than welcome. But I think we give ourselves September to look at those general principles, to add to or take away. It's a start point. I think we have to start somewhere, and this is a very good start paper that Alpha Marine have provided. So I'm really pleased that they've done that. That's all I've got. Kuba.
Excellent, thank you. So moving on, medical supplies new standards. Done. Update from Cuba. Obviously, I was on holiday for a week, enjoyed it thoroughly, catching up big style now. A lot happening, and I'm very pleased actually that August's usually very quiet. This August is not that quiet. I'll start with a bad news, a really bad news, and I'm looking forward to hear from you guys. We had a ship, member had a ship in Malaysia with a Filipino crew member, and they refused to offload him for the hospital. We did manage to offload the guy from the ship, or we're just about to do that. None of the hospitals would take him. Blank refusal. Then the owner, managers, managed to get him back and sail the ship to India, where he was treated immediately. The good news is he survived. It was a Filipino bosun, 54, 56 years old, if my memory doesn't fail me. But the approach and attitude of Malaysia is just appalling. and I don't know what to do with that. So I'm really looking forward to your guidance, guys. What we ship managers are going to do with our guys being refused medical assistance. If it was any other nationality, or not nationality, any other trade, imagine driver or anybody. As a paramedic, I've got an obligation to lend the help, handing help, and unfortunately, this is not happening. I'm pausing for a second, waiting for you guys. Is there anybody, or if you wish, please come back to me on email and give me your advice. What, as an association, we are supposed to do with cases like that? Obviously, we did well. I have to admit that as an intermanager, I do have a very good contact in Malaysian Navy. So we got in touch immediately. As usual, it was Saturday, 3 o'clock in the morning, daytime. They did respond to my phone call. We got a helicopter up. We were able to do a lot of good stuff there, but it didn't go well later on, unfortunately. So please, 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 if you've got any ideas, if you know how to be more successful when any of us is in need, then I would really appreciate that. Obviously, IMO has been notified. ILO has been identified as well as one of the stakeholders, and the diplomatic note were sent. Intertanko was involved in that, big style. I think they were actually the instigators of this. So all of us, the Inters, got together and tried very hard. Sorry, this is not a very good news in my opinion, but I need to share that with you. The other thing is on the medical supplies. Mark provided. I'm very happy to continue with now feedback from you, how we are going technically about ordering stuff. But also, I have circulated 2 weeks ago paper prepared by Anglo-Eastern, and I have received 3 comments. One comment was to the paper of Anglo-Eastern, then we should add medical advice. So the administering oxygen, to be sure that it is after the advice sought from medical advice, medical radio. So we are not on a willy-nilly, then shipmaster decides on that. So I think this is very good. There was also a comment which I will be circulating to all of you, because one of the members suggested that we should look carefully on employing diabetic seafarers, because their prognostics are not very good when COVID strikes. So that will be an interesting to either, well, just think about that. Have you done anything with diabetic seafarers? Are you tightening up your PMEs? And whether we should, well, that came on the back of our discussion of oxygen things. And the third one was, let me check because I've forgotten now. Oh yeah, the quantities. We should stipulate the quantity, and I have to probably go back and see what the technical spec of the condensators are versus bottles. So this will probably need to be tightened up, the document we've got circulated at the moment. And that's all from me on the medical oxygen discussion. Anybody?
Kuba, will you circulate? How do we want to go about the oxygen concentrator? Will you circulate the document that GenPro sent us, and then I guess people can contact GenPro direct, or how should we do that? We need to, that price is for 500, a minimum 500. So we'll certainly be putting our fleet into that. But if anyone can get any better, maybe you circulate it. We have a week to see whether anyone can get any better. I assure you they won't, because they did they were under strict instructions to sort of scour the market. But maybe we give it a week and then we start taking orders, because I think for $800 I would pay a lot more to save ourselves the potential heartache that we could have had last week, I must say. But
I think that would be a prudent way forward. So I'll definitely circulate the document. I understand I've got a permission now from Colombia to do so. I will circulate that and then ask people to come back with comments and suggestions. I think that would be superb if you guys could actually work here as a lead, because InterManager, we don't have a secretariat here, and I would definitely be only collecting and then putting it all that get again to you. So very good, Colombia. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I am scanning my screen for any comments on Malaysia, oxygen now, or anything else. No. Okay, moving on to the standard. So I will be reaching out to all members for the drafting committee. We did have 3 names put forward 2 months ago for people who were willing, so I'll definitely reach out to these people. Mark, could you give me a hint here? How many people do you think we should have in this drafting committee? Are we looking at?
I would keep it tight. I mean, certainly some of the new members came on board because of our commitment to a standard. So I'd be very surprised if they didn't want to put a person on that committee. I'll certainly want to be on the committee, but if we keep it to about 10, I would have thought that's and people give their views. It's really just looking at the principles. I've gone through it and a number of times, and I think they it's pretty much there. So it's tweaking, but there may be issues that we feel as an organisation we should be ascribing to, and it sets out a nice pathway as well to achieving all of these principles. So I think there's not a lot of work there, but we want it to be inclusive, and people will have other ideas too. So keep it small, but let's see how many people are interested. I'd be surprised if we had 10 people, but I mean there is a bit of work to do here.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm clear on that one. Okay, well, we are doing very well today. Now I'm looking, Ral is with us. Ral, do we have your colleague from US? You are muted at the moment.
Neil, no, I think he was only able to join us just before the session, so which we said was 2:30 we were shooting for. So.
Okay, very good. But I think we are ready to go with you now.
Well, I could do a bit of hot shoe shuffle. I'll try and do it justice.
Yes, please. No, I think this would be good because, yeah, we are doing very well time-wise today. So, Ral, over to you.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, look, it's nice to have a chance to speak, and I think I mainly wanted Neil here for the questions. So he's much more in the sort of detail of things than I am. Let me just bring up my presentation then. And thank you for the ability to present today. Nice to be doing a presentation under more relaxed circumstances for these amongst friends. So yeah, to begin with, what I'm going to talk about today is an initiative. So seeing both those logos up there on the screen and stuff, it's really nothing more than a partnership around being able to offer joint services or anything. So there's no kind of, it's not mergering or anything like that. And essentially, Neil, who's going to join us, and myself will be presenting hopefully. And Neil works with obviously Wärtsilä, a huge organisation, but Wärtsilä is has lots of parts to it, obviously, and this is the voyage part, so the bit that sort of turned over from Transas. Am I presenting my deck or the notes or both? Can you just see the slide?
We see your slide proper. Okay. No notes.
Terrific, great. And so yeah, once we started talking together, we realised that you'll see there's some points of convergence and stuff, but we realised we got a lot of the same customers, a lot of the same vision, and you'll see this with a lot of traditional kind of e-learning providers and traditional simulation providers. A lot of the things are sort of merging and blurring the lines between the two, and realized that we had quite a lot of similar things that we were working towards, similar customers, and could we get together and could we offer something together? So that's really just the kind of opening, and we'll talk about that specifically, but I just want to do a bit of scene setting as well amongst this group, because obviously you've been seeing me turn up every week with these logos here. But when I joined XCOM, I was as part of the Videotel team, which is now Videotel's part of Ocean Technologies Group now. So that's a combination of all those brands that you see. But what a lot of people don't always realise until you get into sort of conversations is that we're operating as a single team really now, with a single CEO, single executive team, of which I'm on, and functional areas. So we're trying to what we do is quite broad, so not everybody's going to buy everything we do, but we're trying to, where there's opportunities to consolidate teams and services and so on, that's what we're doing. obviously meaning that we can do more and kick things along much further. And a good example of that is what we launched at the beginning of the year, which is the Ocean Learning Platform. And that's really where all of the stuff we're going to be talking about today is happening. So I'll just spend a couple of moments to talk about that. And really, it's like the evolution of what we did with I see Stephen on the call, with the VOD box and the STA box that Seagull had. And sort of, looking at that again and appraising where that goes and taking it further into what we see in other industries from sort of what big sort of learning management systems are all about. And I'll let this run in the background because it gives you a bit of a sense of the kind of what's different about that approach. And it's really, you'll see things like the sort of notifications that it's bringing in sort of company information. We're presenting to the learner in a much more kind of much more guided way around where they need to focus, around the things that they should be doing to fulfill their training requirements. So you've got things like these required tasks that you can see and very clearly see where they are and how far they are along on that journey. And what that also highlights is that the number of different activities is changing as well. So it's not just sort of watching a video or taking a computer-based test these days. We're also talking about things like feedback surveys, like I said, company notices, could be information, could be how-to videos, OEM material. So, and some we're discussing, have discussions already with some that will be associate members of InterManager, people who are equipment manufacturers and so on, who want to build some of their learning into the picture as well. And with the broadening of those activities, we also launched a bit earlier this year the integrated learning management, virtual classroom. Now, the virtual classroom, these are tools really like the one we're using today, where you're presenting and talking. So these, I'm sure that many of you are using and have been using all the way through the pandemic. So nothing particularly different about what we're doing there with that core piece, but the difference for us being integrated is what we build around that learning session. So this is really all about being able to invite your participants, being able to set pre-learning activities. So for when you're doing classroom learning, if any of you have taught, you'll know how difficult it can be if you've got people at different levels. So you can level people up ahead of time by sort of working out where they need to do, where they need to sort of acquire some background knowledge and so on. And then obviously setting all reminders and everything in the system. So that whole kind of administration of that. And then, of course, as well as the pre-event, just as important, the post-event and what happens there in terms of, do you set remedial training to follow up from something that happened in the session? Feedback surveys so that you can gather really important information around what to improve next time, the things people understood, they didn't follow, things they enjoyed, and so on. And also storing those recordings in one place so that they're then accessible as material afterwards. So it's that integrated aspect of it that really adds a lot of the value, rather than having sort of to jump from different platforms to send out invites over email, all those things all being contained. And the other thing that this represents, and why I'm dwelling on it, is because it really then starts to blur that line between what happens in the with the shore-based training strategy and the on-board training strategy, because those lines are blurring now, of course, as well. And if you have the connectivity to run those kind of virtual classrooms across to the vessel, then it really starts to blur. But it's that aspect of what we're trying to do with the learning platform, of connecting the expertise that you have in your business and around the industry and bringing that in. So it's not just about the learning that's in the library that we've traditionally done, but all those other activities as well, which is really the starting point for where I'll go next. And this is really just kind of bringing that sort of, looking at where we've been and where we're going. And as I said, just now, traditionally you've had the shipping company or the manning agency in some cases, and they're managing that sort of learning on board and keeping track of that ashore, and that was kind of how it was for a time. And then there was the training that was happening at the METI, and some of which involving on-premise simulators. And those two things were kind of existing in very different worlds, certainly when I came into the industry, and it was quite a long time before I really understood, really what was going there. I mean, some metas were using video tell material or whatever, but it was quite disjointed, those two things. But what we've seen is that as we, what's happened there? Sorry, one second. But what we've seen is that as I said, connectivity's got better, as more and more of that learning experience from the traditional world that I come from, and those platforms and services have moved into the cloud. And the same thing's been happening in the simulator world. So things like use of virtual machines and that kind of thing has made those very powerful simulators that could never run in a browser previously, those are able to happen. And so there's this convergence around that. And then also as well, seafarers then changing the way that they're accessing that training. So they could be, he's just in time. Here comes Neil. So the seafarers as well coming into the picture there and wanting to be able to access that training at any time. Neil, are you there?
Yes.
Kuba made me start without you because we had extra time, but then that means we won't maybe need to rush so much. Can I introduce you? Do you want to step in at this point? I've just mangled your slide.
Yeah, sure. My apologies. Yeah, I just
No
had
worries.
to finish a call with Bill Truelove.
Oh no, we started early, so it's the fault is ours. But yeah, so I was just explaining, setting the scene really a little bit around Ocean Learning Platform, and just got to this point there where we're just talking about the seafarers entry. So do you want to take over at this point?
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, this slide is all about how we fit into potentially this new maritime learning ecosystem. Until recently, I think training was in these separated and disconnected systems. There's the onboard part, the OTG part, and then a lot of training obviously going on at the training centers where Wärtsilä provided the on-premise simulators. And now, even before the pandemic, these things were beginning to come together. And now with both the OTG's technology moved to the cloud and simulation being pushed to the cloud and adopted a lot more because of the pandemic, we're bringing these two together, which ultimately means, you've got the connection and the sharing of data across this whole spectrum now potentially. And most importantly, you can see there, it gives the opportunity to train the seafarers anytime, anywhere, rather than having to ship them around the world to various locations. Of course, I think the future is a blended approach, but there's a lot to be gained from doing a certain amount of the training or the preparation for training online. And it certainly means you can react quicker when new training requirements come up. So it's really important. We've added there industry stakeholders. This isn't an enclosed system for Wärtsilä and OTG. It's really important we have all the different stakeholders able to connect in an open architecture. So, standard formats, industry best practices, assessments. The flag states are looking very closely at doing a lot of their assessments online because it means they can use their resources a lot more efficiently. And once we get to that stage, we can actually think about what is really important in the general e-learning training world, which is about adaptive learning techniques, learning in the flow of work, and other types of embedded training where, we can access training materials through our mobile devices on board the ships, at the training centers, wherever we are at any particular time. So this is really what we're trying to build. And if you could go to the next slide, Raoul, we've taken the first step. So we announced our partnership with OTG, when was it? Back in February. And since then, we've both actually poured quite a lot of our resources into the first stage of development, which is all around putting both classroom simulation and self-directed exercises into the cloud and making them available through the Ocean Learning platform. So the workflow is pretty simple, as it should be. The entry point for users is via the Ocean Learning platform. Instructors and administrators can assign exercises or training events to the learners that are set up in the system. There's a nice system for keeping a calendar for the users of when they have to get things done or when they have to join. And it's very easy for them to just come into the platform, log in, set up to join an event or to do a self-directed event themselves. And from our side, then what that does is it sets up a virtual machine which has the simulator running on it, and the students then access the simulators, and really for them it looks just like it does when they're sitting in a classroom at a training center or in a shipping company's office. So yeah, all pretty straightforward for the users. So if we go to the next slide, we can have we just captured a couple of screenshots. We can certainly give a demo if anyone's interested, but so the learner logs into the Ocean Learning platform, and on their homepage, they see their training events. They have access to all the different OLP resources. And so this one's an example of an ECDIS voyage planning exercise. The learner then familiarizes themselves with the exercise. They've got a rundown of exactly what they need to do. And you can see there's a button to join the exercise. Click on the button, and it will fire up the simulator and start the exercise for them. And you can see there's a screen capture where we're using our eTutor, which is a built-in automated learning and assessment piece of software. So that's used where there isn't an instructor to guide the student to the learning objective, or to give them the various assessments along the way as they go through some kind of assessment program, which is of great interest at the moment, because I know a lot of companies are bringing people back into the industry, and they want to obviously assess where they are prior to them going back on board the vessels. So yeah, just very briefly there, you can see this is what we've managed to do in just a few months, and we've got a really exciting roadmap plan of other things to do with this online learning and building the simulators and all the fantastic tools on the OLP together to hopefully give the industry a lot of advantages and a lot of help with the learning. So yeah, back to you, Raoul.
Thanks, Neil. So I think you could probably visualize quite quickly the benefits of being able to have the sort of underpinning knowledge, and then more towards the application and the assessment of that knowledge in the simulator, and things like the virtual classroom allowing for that sort of tutor-student interaction. All of that's probably pretty clear. And Neil mentioned as well the resources that go with that. So, that's a combination of just the sort of traditional e-learning libraries that we produced, generic training, company-specific procedures, OEM-specific, and then how to do certain things with the technology itself, all those kind of things. But when you start looking at the bigger picture and the implications of that, I think it's really it really starts to get the imagination going in terms of what's possible. So things like competency management, where you're looking to build proficiencies, which are a mixture of knowledge but also demonstration of real-world tasks, how that then performance data is collected and pushed up into analytics so that your crew management for sort of career management, career succession planning, and those kinds of things. And even things like planned maintenance, where you're looking at sort of different performance from different vessels, the use of, say, consumables that are being used, or longevity of parts and things like that, and then being able to look at that against performance in the learning and the assessment and simulation world. It starts to kind of build this picture of how that data can really start to work when it's all in one place and it's all able to kind of be created in those kind of workflows. So in the interest of time, I'll just dwell on some of these, which are the kind of the real benefits that I think that to focus in on. Firstly, the flexibility, the fact that this really high-end quality simulation can be accessed on an as-used basis, sort of pay-as-you-go basis anywhere, really. So you're not bound by sort of the scheduling constraints of on-premise installations, and you can sort of scale with demand as you need it, because there's no limit to the number of virtual machines that you can run. The cost efficiencies, I think Neil dwelled on those possibly earlier, or maybe I did. But really looking at that, I mean, we know we can save money on travel costs and those kinds of things. But it's also, and accommodation as well, of course. But it's also some of those other costs as well, of time being away from work, and the per diems and everything. And really just the efficiencies as well of being able to plan things in one sort of single workflow as well. So logistical savings as well there. In terms of the new possibilities that it offers, I mean, this is really where we want to get into conversations with people like yourselves and talk about the kinds of things that as kind of applications that you see for it. But for us, we look at these really all about being able to connect these workflows that make sense all the way through. And I can even see when I'm, looking at what's possible, is that why wouldn't you, given the ease with which you can spin stuff up, why wouldn't you include this as part of some of your recruitment activities to actually see how people perform in some of these simulator activities and stuff like that? And also being able to connect people in ways that you haven't been able to before. So I'll come back to that. And then as far as the market goes, the open market collaboration, Neil's saying there, this isn't an opportunity for us to sort of get together and go, oh, we can do everything. This is really about being able to connect people to beyond their local markets. Because if you think about it, as a simulator training center at the moment, you've got your local market, or you've got to fly people in, and you've got a finite sort of number of people that you can kind of be pitching to. Here, as we move towards some of the really big challenges we're going to face as an industry in pursuit of, of 2050, etc., there's going to be a lot of new technology. There's going to be a lot of things that need to be learned. This gives a chance for people to become centers of excellence for certain things, and to bring, to serve that market from wherever. So, so I really think that those are the there's big wins, I think, for everybody that both consumes and provides training today. Also worth looking at the protagonists, I think, and what it might mean for them. So for learners, it's pretty obvious that you've got that benefit of that flexible working, but also there's more sort of support for both pre and post the sessions. It's more sort of continuous flow, and an easier tracking of their achievements, because all of this is potentially data that can be rationalized. For instructors, again, a very similar picture in terms of the flexibility, but it's also thinking about being able to build the cohorts that you want to build. If you want to be able to put different levels of experience together, different levels of different nationalities, different people from different training centers and what have you, you can do all of that, and then design those much richer pathways as well, where you can address more of the application of knowledge. And then for administrators, probably the biggest benefit really for them is just making this whole thing manageable in terms of single workflows, being able to assemble cohorts without worrying about where they are geographically, that kind of thing, and staying on top of the data. I think that's the key consideration there, being able to see all of this and it all makes sense. So yeah, so where in terms of where we are, really, as Neil said, I think it's getting it in front of people now and being able to demo it, being able to talk about how it could work for you strategically in the organization. I mean, Neil, do you want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. We've got new technologies. There were, the technology when the pandemic hit, we and other companies had done a lot for online learning. Simulation had been a little bit held back because there wasn't the push for adoption There wasn't the drive, but obviously it happened fast. And now I think a year or so in, these solutions are becoming pretty slick and fairly frictionless for users. And yeah, we're really looking to collaborate with industry as much as possible to find these new applications to help us through the new challenges that we have. So, if anyone that's on the line is interested to learn a bit more, please drop us a line, and we'll be very happy to give a demo. It's amazing in the demos we're doing all the time. So many different things, so many different possible applications come up. So it's a really interesting time for maritime training, going through quite a big change right now.
Yeah. Questions, comments?
I'm dying to ask one. But first of all, introduction. I really like both Seagull and Videotel, always supported these guys. And especially when I was a seafarer, and then I continue to be a seafarer, therefore I continue training myself. And very recently, RAL gave me enclosed space entry video, and I thought, I am the best man in the industry. I definitely need to go through all of this. And I did, and I tested myself, and I scored 61%. And I thought, blimey, something is wrong here. I know why. I know precisely why. Because I'm complacent. Because I did my initial training 35 years ago, and I haven't moved on. Now, there is a point I want to make. A lot of people in the office believe that they have all the knowledge. And I was talking to Raul, then we really need to start looking into the office training, because we've got a problem, Houston. Office is out of date. Seafarers are far more updated nowadays. My question to you, Raul, is why you haven't mentioned anything about the seafarer as the owner of a data? So my question is the seafarer owner of his training data, moving from one place to the other? Is he able to log in and show, let's say I'm Bernard Schulte for 17 years, now I'm moved on to V-ships, I come with my luggage of my experience training, which I gained through Videotel, Seagull. Am I able to present that at my interview, for example? Over to you.
Yeah, can we do another session on that? Because I could talk about that for hours. I mean, it's the question that you're asked is one that is being increasingly asked, and there are different points of view. Technically, yes, it's entirely possible that you could do it, and it's entirely beneficial that you could do it. What's more, for most parties, but the relationship, as you know, that we have is with the customer, is the company. So that has been thrown into some sort of debate by GDPR, of course, because GDPR, the implication is it's your data and you can ask for it at any time, and it even specifies formats. So from a legal perspective, there's a whole bunch of discussion around that. There's a whole bunch of discussion around what would be right, and then there's a whole bunch of discussion about what would be responsible for us to do. We've had seafarers trained with us. If they get their courses, that's always been seen as they get a certificate, and that's always been seen as something they can take with them. We've never been in the realm of saying you can export a seafarer's data and take it to another company. And I think there's big implications to that. And I think that's something that we would only do in a kind of forum like this with stakeholder involvement, because it's such a big decision. But if you think about it we've got some of the biggest, ship managers on this call. If you think about the idea that you could be taking somebody on who's already got some of the same training in the same format, even that you've got your existing seafarers, I could see that there's a lot of benefit there, because you've got a much richer history of that individual and how they've performed over time. But it is a big subject, and I wouldn't claim that I could do it justice in the next 5 minutes.
But Raul, thank you. You know that I'm always on the lookout for the subjects, difficult ones. Okay, I don't want easy.
Have a debate. It would be really interesting, but I think we need to listen to all the different people's perspectives. And you know, at the moment, it's not something seafarers are asking for, but I think it's a matter of time before they would.
Ral, that is completely untrue. I'm really sorry to say that. Seafarers are always asking for it. The problem is
asking us. Sorry, I mean,
because you are B2B, you're not B2 customer, and very often shipping industry does not see seafarer as a customer. Imagine you are a pilot. Pilot is king of his own data. Okay, pilot is moving between and so on and so forth. In shipping, we seem to have masters. We have to, and so on and so forth. But I take your point, thank you, and I'm taking it as my homework, and I will test my ship managers, our members, and see whether there is appetite for discussion. Because among seafarers, there is a huge appetite for the discussion. Problem is, seafarers can't reach out to RAL, because RAL, you are you are somewhere there, you know, going through and so on. Okay, I don't want to monopolize. I don't see any yellow hands. There was a question asked by Marcus whether you will be distributing your slides after. I believe you will. If you send them to me, then I can send them over to all our members.
Happy to, and the recordings there as well. If Marcus wants them, you know, in a different format or whatever, yeah, he knows me, so it's no problem. But yeah, no problem with you. All of this is in the public domain that we're sharing today, so it's no problem.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Okay, Stephen Bond. What a surprise, Stephen.
A great presentation, Raoul, as always. The question I've got here is that the benefit of simulation, land-based simulation, the Warsashes, the Singapore, is that a trainer can set a syllabus, get people together from different companies on a bridge or in an engine room, and then go back and monitor their response. And he can see the interface and the play between various people. How do you manage to inject that into something like this? I mean, is it the classroom? Can you get that momentum through the classroom? Or is this a stepping stone to something like virtual reality, where you might be able to get more people selectively together? Because at the moment, I wouldn't, if I was a shipping company and I had a simulator on land, as many do in many parts of the world, I don't think I'd be binning it just yet. But I'd love a response to that. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can take that one.
Neil,
yeah, I mean, first thing, please don't bin those. We want you to keep those for as long as possible. And you answered the question yourself. You know, really, the answer is the simulation that we have online now is really replacing classroom type training. So the interface and the level of immersion is very similar to sitting in a classroom. And remember, for things like radar, we're supposed to enclose the students so that they can't see their peers in the classroom. So it's great for individual training, you know, radar, ARPA, call regs, those types of things. But we have also done bridge resource management, where you actually utilize something like Teams to bring the people together. And, you know, the virtual classroom that I think Raoul mentioned previously, we can achieve a lot in a virtual environment to get people together for that briefing, simulation event, and then afterwards a debriefing, which is really where all the learning is done in a lot of different applications. But yeah, I think the future is blended. I think one of the first things that happens when you go on these training courses, you've got probably the best part of a day of, let's say, a 4 or 5 day course where you are figuring out what it's all about there, how to use the equipment that's on the full mission bridge. But you can do a lot of that before you get there. So it's those subtle changes that can improve things. But I don't think we will replace the importance of having those immersive full mission systems with interaction between bridges and so on. To touch on the virtual reality part, that that has more potential, of course, because of the fact that you are immersed in it, and we've attached virtual reality to the same simulators used in the full mission bridges, which I think there's an underlying advantage there in that you are using all the modeling that's in that full mission bridge that makes it realistic for the ship handling, the environment, the physical nature of ropes and all those things. And you can put that into the virtual reality. So I think, we'll end up with three things: really immersive full mission training in the same way that aviation still puts their pilots through it every year, right, in a fully immersive. You'll probably have virtual reality replaces these mid-size simulators, but you'll still have them in the training center, and you might have 3 physical bridges and 3 virtual reality stations, right? And then I think a lot of the classroom stuff can be done both remotely and on site. Again, cadets will probably do a lot on site, but then they can do practice for examinations when they go back to their dorm room or whatever, and we can increase the quality by allowing people more access to simulation to hone their skills.
I think as well, you've got a way off. It's a bit like with when you have a meeting, we'd all rather be having this meeting around a nice big table and all have a glass of wine afterwards. That's better. But the logistics involved in bringing us all together to do that are enormous. And so this is kind of a good second, thing to do. That doesn't mean that we're saying it's better, but it's more possible to achieve. And I think the thing that occurs to me is, like, when there's an incident that you need to respond quickly and you want to put all your top 4 through exercises, the logistics of bringing them all to a training center to do that maybe give you too much time that you're not happy with how long that's going to take. And so this is a way of being able to say, well, we can't do that right now. Well, what could we do that would at least get us some way to where we want to be and address that need? And so if the speed in the reaction is more important than the depth of the experience, because you're right, Stephen, when someone's observing people in a full mission bridge simulator, they're looking at body language, they're looking at a whole bunch of things that we're not going to be able to do. But we can do a hell of a lot. We can get a hell of a lot of the way there, and we can do that much more easily and much more cost effectively.
Thank you.
Kuba's on mute. Cheers, Stephen.
Yeah, Kuba is talking to you. I'm muted. Very, very clever. Thank you. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for being with us and providing it, as you can see, stimulating. And I will continue chasing you, Ral, because I thoroughly enjoy your modules and everything. And I love reality check. I can't imagine any other marine superintendent or technical superintendent why they wouldn't like to check where we are now before I say keep advising ships. And then I have to make sure that I actually know what I'm talking about. That's
to give you some comfort, just to share with you, it's an increasing discussion that we're having with our bigger customers is around even implementing competency management for the shore staff, because it's getting to that point now where there's, even if they have a very rich history at sea, if they've been away for 10 years, so much has changed that there's that sort of knowledge gap, inevitable knowledge gap. And why shouldn't they, reacquaint themselves with things through simulation, through, build up that knowledge?
Just if I could just add one thing there, an interesting step in that regard is the next level for bridge resource management or crew resource management, because obviously with ships being connected, when there is an incident on board, now the shoreside team is obviously playing quite a role in managing the outcomes of such an event. And there are some colleges that are really looking at this now. So it's like a fleet operations resource management, where if you have then an incident, you actually have that team ashore. And you've got learning objectives of people to understand where the master makes the decision and where the shoreside makes the decision. But the simulator then puts you in an environment where you're actually under the right amount of pressure everybody, the shoreside team and the shipboard team, and figuring out how to work better together. So there's some really interesting new things that are coming because of all this interconnection and the digital technologies that go with it.
I am delighted that this discussion wasn't only about connectivity, IT, and technology. We are far more holistic now. We are talking about human behavior, why people want to learn, how people start. This is brilliant, Neil and Ralph. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I couldn't have, dreamt of a better ending of this presentation. So thank you. Really appreciate that. I would like wrap up our meeting. I know I'm ahead of the time. I love to be ahead of the time because I'm ship manager. I need to deliver. So you will have 8 minutes for the coffee, tea, or if we finish earlier. So thank you, everyone. I've got homework to do, and no doubt you will be given this homework because I need to ask you some questions and everything. Mark is not with us anymore because he had to bail out. I am putting the guillotine down now. Thank you. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time, but then stay tuned because there is a lot of messages coming out of our secretariat. So enjoy the rest of your day and the week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.